All right, so get this.
Uh-huh.
You know how after a wildfire, sometimes they go in and remove the burned trees?
Right.
Turns out
Yeah.
that might be doing more harm than good for all those critters trying to make a comeback.
Yeah.
We're diving into a study today
Oh, cool.
that flipped the script on how we think about forests bouncing back after a fire,
Okay.
especially for those adorable snowshoe hares and red squirrels.
It's a real eye-opener.
Right.
This study out of British Columbia, Canada,
Yeah.
they looked at what happens to these animals
Yeah.
when a forest that's already been hit by wildfire is then subjected to salvage logging. And the findings are, well, let's just say they challenge some common assumptions.
Okay, so picture this.
Okay.
A forest
Yeah.
recovering nicely after a fire.
Right.
All this new growth popping up.
Yeah.
Then boom.
Yeah.
Salvage logging comes in and clears out a bunch of those trees.
Yeah.
You'd think it would help, Ree.
Yeah, you would think so.
More space,
Yeah.
less fire hazard.
Right.
But for the hares and squirrels,
Yeah.
it's a disaster.
It is.
Really?
Yeah. What's fascinating here is that the study directly compared these salvage-logged areas
Okay.
to forests that were allowed to recover naturally after the fire.
Yeah.
And the difference in wildlife populations
Yeah.
was striking.
So spill the tea.
Okay.
What happened
no.
to our furry friends
Yeah.
in these different scenarios?
Well, the hares,
Yeah.
those fluffy bundles of energy,
Right.
they actually thrived in the areas that were left alone after the fire.
It's-
All that new growth was like an all-you-can-eat buffet for them.
Uh-huh.
Plus, plenty of places to hide from predators.
Makes sense. Talk about a post-fire paradise.
But I thought squirrels were all about the trees.
You're right.
Yeah.
They do prefer mature forests.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
even in these older burned areas...
There were still enough standing trees for
Yeah.
the squirrels to make a living.
Right.
Their numbers weren't quite as high as in the untouched forests,
Okay.
but they were doing all right.
So fire, not so bad for these guys.
Not necessarily.
As long as you leave the forest alone afterwards.
Yeah, that seems to be the case.
But what about those salvage logged areas?
Yeah.
What was the scene there?
It was like a ghost town.
Really?
Both hares and squirrels
Wow.
were practically non-existent in those areas, even after almost a decade.
Wow.
The logging basically undid all the good that came with natural forest regeneration.
Wait, seriously?
Yeah.
So removing the burned trees actually made things worse
It seems that way.
for wildlife.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
It is a key takeaway here.
Wow.
And it's a big one.
Yeah.
Salvage logging can actually delay the recovery of wildlife populations for
Uh-oh.
years.
Yeah?
Compared to simply letting the forest recover naturally.
Wow. Okay.
Pretty surprising.
That's pretty mind-blowing.
Yep.
But how did the researchers actually figure all of this out?
Yeah.
Did they, like, follow hares around with tiny GPS trackers
Not quite.
and spy on squirrel families?
Uh-huh.
Really?
Well, not quite that dramatic.
Okay.
But they did get pretty hands-on with their research.
Okay.
They went out into these different forest types and meticulously measured everything.
Oh, wow.
Tree density,
Yeah?
the amount of underbrush,
Okay.
even the volume of dead wood on the ground.
Wow.
They were basically playing wildlife detective,
Cool.
piecing together clues from the environment
Yeah.
to see how hares and squirrels were using the landscape. And what they found
Yeah.
was pretty telling.
Okay.
In those older burned areas where the hares were thriving,
Right.
the surveys showed tons of dense, yummy regrowth.
Oh, wow.
Perfect for hiding and snacking.
Yeah.
It's like the fire created this
Yeah.
ideal bunny buffet.
Right, but then the loggers came in.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Trying to call up, right? Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The salvage logged areas were like a
Mhm.
different planet.
Right.
Hardly any trees,
Wow.
barely any shrubs,
Yeah.
lots of wide open space.
Okay.
Not exactly a hare's dream home.
No wonder they were scarce there.
Yeah,
It's like comparing a lush jungle to a parking lot.
exactly.
But what about the squirrels?
Yeah.
What did their detective work uncover
Oh,
about their
the
preferences?
squirrels are all about those big mature trees
Yeah.
for their cones and cozy nests, as
Yeah.
you'd expect.
Uh-huh.
The untouched mature forests had the most of these.
Yeah.
But even in the older burned areas
Right.
where some trees survived,
Yeah.
the squirrels were doing okay.
Hmm.
They had enough resources to hoe around.
So even a few trees can make a big difference for them.
Absolutely.
Wow.
But in those salvage logged areas,
Yeah.
not a single squirrel midden in sight.
A squirrel what?
A midden?
Oh.
Those are the little piles of cones they stash away.
Oh, right.
No middens means no squirrels.
Yeah.
They just couldn't make it there.
That's kind of sad.
It is.
It's like someone came in and bulldozed their neighborhood,
Yeah.
taking away their homes and their grocery stores.
Right.
Wow.
It really highlights
Yeah.
how our actions can have unintended consequences.
Right.
And this study shows those consequences can last for years.
Okay.
The hares and squirrels in the salvage log areas were still struggling, even after almost a decade.
So it's not just a short-term problem.
No.
It's a long-term setback
Right.
for the whole forest system.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've seen how these critters are affected by fire and logging.
Mm-hmm.
But why are they so picky
That's a good question.
about their real estate in the first place?
Yeah.
What's with the hare's obsession with hiding
Okay.
and the squirrel's need for treetop living?
Well, it all boils down to their survival strategies,
Right.
which have been honed over thousands of years.
Okay.
Snowshoe hares are, let's face it, on the menu
Yeah.
for a lot of predators.
Right.
Lynx, owls,
Yeah.
coyotes,
Yeah.
you name it.
Makes sense.
So avoiding becoming someone's dinner
Yeah.
is their top priority.
Hence the need to blend into the background.
Exactly.
Like a furry ninja.
That brown and white coat
Yeah.
is perfect camouflage
Yeah.
in a dense forest.
Okay.
And those powerful hind legs,
Yeah.
perfect for a quick getaway
Right.
when a predator gets too close for comfort.
Okay, so hares are masters of hide and seek.
You could say that.
What about the squirrels?
Yeah.
How do they avoid becoming a hawk's afternoon snack?
Trees are their fortresses.
Makes sense.
Those high branches
Yeah.
provide safety from ground predators,
Right.
and squirrels are expert climbers,
I-
zipping between branches with ease.
Cool.
Plus, they've got that loud chattering alarm system to
Yeah.
warn their buddies.
Yeah. If danger approaches.
Like their own little neighborhood watch program up in the canopy.
Exactly.
It's amazing how these animals have developed these incredible strategies
It is.
to survive in their environment.
Yeah.
And that's what makes this study so significant.
Right.
It shows how human actions, like salvage logging,
Yeah.
can disrupt these carefully tuned survival mechanisms,
Right.
take away their hiding spots and food sources, and their chances of making it plummet.
Yeah, it's a tough break for them.
It's a sobering reminder that forests aren't just timber resources.
No, they're not.
They're complex ecosystems that support a whole web of life.
Exactly.
But let's shift gears for a moment.
Okay.
Okay, we've talked about the problem, and it's a big one.
For sure.
But what about solutions?
Okay.
Is there any hope
Well,
for finding that sweet spot between using forests for logging
right.
and protecting the animals that live there?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Right.
And there are no easy answers.
Okay.
But this study does offer some intriguing insights
Yeah.
and potential paths forward.
Give us the good news.
All right.
What are some of the things we can do differently?
Well, the researchers aren't saying we need to abandon salvage logging entirely,
Okay.
but they are advocating
Yeah.
for a more thoughtful, strategic approach,
Gotcha.
less of a clear-cut and run mentality, and more of a let's think about the long-term health of the forest approach.
So less chainsaw frenzy,
Hi.
more careful planning.
Yeah.
Got it. So, but what does that actually look like on the ground?
Well, one idea is to leave more of those standing dead trees behind after logging.
Okay.
Even if the live trees are removed,
Right.
those snags provide valuable cover for wildlife.
Okay.
It's about creating a mosaic
Okay.
of different habitats
Yeah.
within the log area rather than just a uniform blank slate. So diversity is key.
Yes.
Like a diverse investment portfolio
Right.
is better than putting all your eggs in one basket.
Exactly.
Right.
Another idea
Okay.
is to be more selective about where we log.
Okay.
Focus on areas that have already been heavily disturbed
Right.
or that aren't as crucial for wildlife habitat.
Kind of like choosing our battles, right?
Exactly.
Prioritizing the areas that need
Yes.
the most protection.
Yeah.
But we can't ignore the elephant in the room.
No, we can't.
Climate change.
Right.
It's making wildfires
Yeah.
more frequent and severe,
Right.
which means
Yeah.
we need to be even more careful
Definitely.
about how we manage forests
Yeah.
after a fire.
It's like playing a game of chess,
Right.
thinking several moves ahead
Yeah.
to anticipate the consequences of our actions.
We need to be thinking long term,
Yeah.
not just about the next harvest.
Right.
But let's be real. there are always competing interests
Mm-hmm.
when it comes to managing forests. And it's
Yeah.
not just about the trees and the animals.
Right.
It's also about the people who depend on those forests for their livelihoods.
Exactly.
So what are some of the biggest roadblocks
Okay.
to actually implementing these more eco-friendly approaches?
Hmm.
What's standing in the way
Yeah.
of that win-win for both the economy and the environment?
You hit the nail on the head.
Right.
One of the biggest challenges
Yeah.
is balancing those short-term economic interests
Right.
with the long-term goal of a truly sustainable forest.
Okay.
Sometimes the quick buck wins out
Uh-huh.
over what's best for the ecosystem in the long run.
It's that classic
Right.
instant gratification versus delayed gratification dilemma.
Yeah.
We want the money now,
Right.
even if it means a less healthy forest down the road.
And sometimes the
Yeah.
economic arguments for salvage logging are overblown. The study actually points out
Oh, well.
that it's not always the cash cow people think it is. When you factor in things like building roads
Yeah.
and the potential environmental damage,
Okay.
the profits shrink pretty quickly.
So it's not always a slam dunk
Not necessarily.
for the economy either.
Right.
Interesting.
Yeah.
What about public perception? Do people even understand
That's a good question.
that leaving burned trees standing can actually be a good thing?
That's a huge hurdle.
Is it?
People see a burned forest and
Oh.
think it's destroyed,
Right.
that it needs to be cleaned up.
Yeah.
Salvage logging can seem like the logical solution,
Makes sense.
but we've seen that those burned areas are actually teeming with life.
Right.
We need to change the narrative around
Yeah.
what a healthy forest looks like.
It's like we need a PR campaign for burned trees.
Uh-huh. I love that.
Charred is the new black.
Exactly.
Right.
And then there's the challenge of translating scientific research
Yeah.
into actual policy.
Hmm.
This study provides all this great evidence,
Right.
but getting those findings
Yeah.
in front of the people who make decisions
Uh-uh.
and turning it into real change.
Right.
Well, that can be a slow and
But-
frustrating process.
So it's not enough to just do the science.
No, it's not.
We have to be advocates for it.
Yeah.
Those research findings need to escape the lab
Yeah.
and make a real-world impact.
Exactly.
Right.
We need scientists,
Yeah.
policymakers,
Okay.
and the public
Yeah.
all on the same page working
Yeah.
together to find solutions.
All right. We've covered a lot of ground today,
We have.
from the nitty-gritty of hare and squirrel hangouts
Mm-hmm.
to the complexities of managing forests
Yeah,
for people and wildlife.
for sure.
So what's the big takeaway here for our listeners?
Okay.
What do you hope they walk away with?
I think the most important thing to remember is that our actions have consequences. What we do in a forest, even something that seems helpful, like
Right.
removing burned trees,
Yeah.
can have ripple effects on the animals that live there
Okay.
and the overall health of the ecosystem.
Right.
We need to be aware of those consequences and make choices that support both the economy
Okay.
and the environment.
It's a delicate dance,
It is.
but we've got to learn those steps.
We do.
This study gives us a roadmap
Yeah.
for making smarter decisions about our forests.
I agree.
But before we wrap up,
Okay.
I have one last thought-provoking question
All right.
for everyone out there listening.
Okay.
This study focused on hares and squirrels.
Right.
But what about all the other creatures
Yeah.
that call the forest home?
Mm-hmm.
What about the owls and the hawks
Yeah.
that rely on those hares and squirrels for dinner?
Right.
Or the birds that nest in those standing dead trees?
Mm-hmm.
What happens to them when we change the forest?
That's a fantastic question.
Right.
And it's one that researchers are actively digging into.
Okay.
The reality is, we're just beginning to understand
Yeah.
the full impact of salvage logging on the intricate web of life in these forests.
It's like peeling back the layers of an onion.
Right?
There's always more to discover.
So true.
So keep those brains buzzing, folks.
Yeah,
There's a whole world of fascinating stuff happening out there in those forests.
for sure.
And every deep dive is a chance to learn something new
I agree.
and maybe even change the way we think
Right.
about the world around us.
Well said.
That's a wrap for today's deep dive
Okay.
into the surprising world of wildfire and wildlife.
Sounds good.
Until next time,
Yeah.
stay curious,
Nice.
keep learning,
Okay.
and remember,
Yeah.
a healthy forest is a happy forest for everyone.